you while navigating, but we'll be here next month. We've got it. We still have a few more coming. If they show up late, that's great, but in the essence of time, we are gonna get started. Hopefully you work after I just. Maybe I gotta put this. You guys, tech is not our specialty. Here we go. Okay. Just a few reminders. Thanks for all coming here. We'll talk about our next meetings. Will not be at this location as this is celebrating the centennial of the train depot. So hope you all come out and celebrate. There's lots of activities happening here. We're gonna go over, we sent you a bunch of things that you asked for, so we got plenty of time for discussion on that. If you have questions, hopefully we can answer them today and discuss like what was the purpose. I'm missing a few things up, or this is not supposed to be on here, but that's okay. Buildings and energy and transportation is what we're gonna focus on today. We have a nice activity and some diving deeper based off of our conversation that we had last time, and then also what's to come after that. Few housekeeping reminders, water and restrooms are over, water's there, restrooms over here. Remember, these meetings are on Zoom. Greg's our IT guy, so if he pops up, that's Greg. They are open to the public if you want to join. They're also on YouTube, so these kind of stay on the record. So keep that in mind. Everything we do in the city as a public agency, of course, is public record. So just a reminder for everyone in that. So with that, discussion. Any questions that you guys might have had on the three? These are the three things that we provided you ahead of time. Demographics, we have that neighborhood almanac. It was created by district. That was kind of how we created this year. In the previous years, it's been done by neighborhood association, but just given kind of how we kind of organize things as the city now, council district just kind of makes the most amount of sense. We provide some commuting programs, commuting information and programs as well. Questions or discussion? I also need to double check if this is the right presentation because I'm concerned that it's not. So I don't remember this photo. I also don't think this is right. So I'm going to track down the right presentation. And I'm going to call Dr. Randy to start the conversation. I didn't really check. Yeah.
So anyone had the chance to go over these resources that we sent out? I learned something from going through them, so I would love to hear like what struck you, what did you not expect, did you totally expect that was affirmed? Just curious.
The latter, what I expected, which was affirmed, was the way they broke out like miles of trails and also just by proximity, like the percentage of folks who commute via bike or walking was highest in District 5 and 6, which also is super close to downtown, and so it kind of made sense. And then there's also Greenbelt and Foothills with a lot higher percentage of the trails, or I guess not trails, I guess it was, what's it called, trails or pathways, right?
Pathways.
Yeah, pathways, I think is what it was called.
And so I was just thinking about it in the context of transportation. If you don't have access to those, or you're farther west, then you're obviously more likely to commute by a car, which is affirmed. But so nothing groundbreaking, but super interesting to see it. I love geeking out this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Similarly, I expected that this might be a thing, but the parts of the city that had the highest number of young adults had the typically lowest amount of home ownership rates. And I think that's something definitely to consider when we're thinking about who wants to take action on climate and what resources do they have access to.
Yeah. One bit of data that wasn't included in what we sent you, but it's like a Treasure Valley-wide picture of what that looks like, is that, and it's so interesting when you look at it through time too, because this data exists, where 30, 40 years ago, there was a more even mix of younger and older folks living in Boise. But as time has gone on, a lot more younger people have had to move out because Boise is more challenging in terms of cost of living. And so a lot of those younger families are now doing those longer commutes to come into Boise, or they're working outside of Boise. But yeah, it's super interesting.
So did it show the average age trending up then? Because I was kind of surprised that the
Yes.
average age was, I think, 38 for the
Yeah,
city.
the average age has trended up. In the communities like CUNA, Middleton, Star, Nampa, Caldwell, the average age is trending down.
What did you expect the average age to be? You said you were surprised it was 38.
I would have expected lower 30s, and I wouldn't have expected it to shift significantly, but
Yeah.
it just seemed.
See, I was surprised 38 seemed young to me.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Like I was expecting it to be much higher.
What else? The home ownership comment is interesting too, because it directly impacts convenience when it comes to your at-home buildings and energy power, right? Like in order to make decisions about how you are getting your energy at your home, as well as things like composting, recycling, using your energy bag. A lot of those services are available now if you live in like multifamily housing or in a rental situation, but they haven't always been. And so that's been something that's challenging in terms of climate as well.
And I think too, this is my perspective as a landscape architect, there's a lot to be gained in how we work with the land. And if people don't have a lot to work with, like a literal lot,
Yeah.
then that really changes what their opportunities are. We need to be planning not just for garden landscaping, but balconies, which is doable.
Container gardening, yeah, we're gonna do a playhouse, so.
Well, yeah, if anyone here is a great container gardener, I would actually really love to talk with you. Plans this year.
Well, additionally, the education on the piece of transitioning from maybe living in an apartment to not, so like I have a close friend who just moved from living in an apartment to renting a house.
Yeah.
And she had no idea what the energy bag even was, right? And so she didn't realize she could be doing that. They didn't have composting at their old place. So even just the educational component of when you live somewhere new, like what are those opportunities?
Yeah, because they're not always,
Exactly.
they're not disclosed, like the rental companies aren't telling you what you can and cannot do, you have to go figure it out. I only knew what was available in my neighborhood because I owned a home in my neighborhood before I was renting, so, yeah, that was huge, so.
I don't know what the dollar figure is on this, but it would be kind of cool. Anytime you move, you do have to move your utilities with the city. So we know when people move into a new place.
Yeah.
So if we ever have, say, a useful packet of information that we send to people when they move, there's an easy flag for us to get it to them. Just a thought. Jumping ahead of myself. Let's do the real things on the agenda.
I'm curious too, what was your takeaway about average income across the city? Was anything striking to you? Was it kind of what you expected and affirmed, or?
It's like, how are people paying bills?
I know, it was much lower than I thought.
It was way lower, especially in like the Boise proper area, that was
Yes.
crazy. I'm like, oh my God.
And then when you think about what an electric vehicle costs.
Yeah, like how much debt is our community in, you know? It's like crazy.
I thought the library membership was interesting too, as it like tracks with like, you look at the other, I mean, just correlation, not causation, but like with income and, you know, who has the time to go get a library card and.
We're back online, you guys.
I was like, personas.
Does anyone have any other takeaways that they'd like to share?
Are we only talking about the demographic one right now, or are we talking about both?
It was all three, so programmatic, demographic, and community.
So the one that I was interested in is it's how we reach carbon neutral by 2050. That was interesting to me. And yeah, and I guess I want to make sure I understand how to read the graph.
Let me see which graph we're looking at, because it's possible I'm gonna talk about it again.
Oh, good,
Some of
it's
this
on
we're gonna
page
know.
4.
Can I just look over your shoulder?
Yeah.
Yep.
This thing, are you gonna pull it up?
I will,
Oh, great, okay, well, I'll save my thoughts about it.
It's
Yeah,
fine.
I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, I appreciate you expressing some interest in that, because it is a little bit tricky to interpret. And I'm happy to kind of walk through it so that everyone
Cool.
feels like I'm understanding it.
Yeah.
What else?
Just like how much our community's greenhouse gas emissions went down during COVID.
Yeah. Like, can we just stay in a pandemic and we done, okay, we're out.
Without the pandemic.
Yeah, I know, without the pandemic, but if we could do that again, that would be awesome.
So much of that was transportation.
Oh, yeah, well, all over the world.
Yeah.
I mean, you saw it in
Yeah.
some of our most, you know, it's crazy.
The pictures of Los Angeles
Yeah.
without smog.
Or Singapore, or
Yeah.
any of those that are just usually on a cloud and just great.
Yes,
We're keeping it
they're
sunshine.
in by like a century.
Yeah.
But I think that was really, through all the unfortunateness of the pandemic, that gave me so much hope to see that over a span of just a couple of weeks of not polluting, there were dolphins in the canals in Venice.
Yeah.
And Venice is a beautiful city, but it is
But
a
it's
polluted
nasty
city.
dirty, yeah.
Yeah. It is amazing how quickly things can recover when we give them the opportunity to.
Yeah.
So,
Mother Earth
good point.
I was trying to be a little bit positive in my mind when I saw that back to that graph that dipped during COVID, but then it leveled off.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, darn, it's not going down at all, but it didn't seem like in the last few years. But maybe on a per capita basis, it is going down a little bit.
So I'll show, I will
Because-
show per capita data today.
Okay,
Cool.
because we are growing and it seemed
Yeah.
basically flat.
We feel your pain a little bit there.
Yeah, I was trying to search for a positive interpretation.
I don't think the story is bad, but we'd like it to be better.
Yeah, more gooder.
I love that you all are thinking about things that we're moving toward. That's great.
You have a lot of data, like the access to data is good. This is more than I expected on the demos, and all the different programs, and there's a ton that is going on, and so I think just it's which ones are most impactful, or could be most impactful, which ones are reaching the right folks, which ones are underpenetrated, like those kind of conversations I think are important, but the 19 slides, there's a lot of things, which is really cool.
And that demographic data that we pulled, I had mentioned that we had done it by neighborhoods before, that will be updated every 2 years from the city now. That's been like the cadence, and it gives our, it takes staff a ton of time to pull the data and put it together just for it to be outdated essentially. But anyway, so that will be updated every 2 years. Not this year again, but be next year, so, yeah. Any other questions or comments? We got a lot of content to go through today on the juicy stuff, so.
Yeah, but we are gonna spend some time on that graph
Yeah.
that you.
Yep.
Yeah.
And there'll be, again, as we go through the presentation today, there'll be activity at the end as well, but make sure if you have questions, feel free to pause in between, because staff will be presenting a lot of stuff today. So, yep, encouraged to be a group conversation.
I think both Randy and I are available afterwards.
And there's a really good chance you're gonna have questions that we don't have the answer to, either because we just don't have that particular thing memorized, it's a lot of information, right, so some of it is memory, or we just need to look it up for you. So don't hesitate to ask questions, we will make note of the things that we can't answer and we will get answers back to you.
Yep, Chelsea's taking our notes for us in the back. And similar, if you guys request certain things, in essence of saving time, like, I hope it's okay that we kind of send you things ahead of time. My goal is at least a week ahead of time, so you can review it, and we're not spending here an hour and a half talking about all those 3 things and really stick to kind of what we're doing. So always opportunities for feedback if we send you stuff ahead of time, and then getting into some of the content of our meeting too. So, perfect, we'll see lots of head shaking. So from there, I think we're okay to move on. If there's any other comments or questions, again, feel free to interrupt, but Randy's gonna kick us off. You got the clicker. Yep. I'll let you take it from here.
And then just a reminder that this stuff that we did send out was in response to the things that you all said you were interested in understanding better. So we do want to try to be responsive to you, and we want to hear from you what you feel like you need to understand the community, the programs, the things we've already tried, the things we want to try. So feel free to ask questions, and we will do our best to round up all these resources for you ahead of okay, so Katie and I are taking on the bulk of the presentation today. I'm going to start out just by introducing myself to kind of remind you all who I am and what I do with the city. But the things that we're going to focus on mainly today have to do with buildings and energy as an emission source as well as transportation. But before we do that, I'm going to do just an explanation of how we measure our emissions for the city. So as a reminder, I'm Randy Wilkins. I'm a Climate Action and Sustainability Coordinator with the City of Boise. I work directly in our Climate Action Division. It's a group of 4 of us, effectively, with some interns here and there, that do kind of the core climate action work. But we have a small but mighty team, And we think of ourselves as the core climate action team in the city, but we actually work along all programs and departments of the city. And so we're constantly reaching out to all of our partners and working together to try to further climate action within our organization and community. But for my climate action work, I focus specifically on transportation, and I've historically done, at least for the last few years, our greenhouse gas emissions inventories for both the city of Boise and for city of Boise as a municipal government, as an organization, as well as the city of Boise as a community. So I do 2 every year. So I'll try to do my best to keep them separated in this conversation. Did it go?
Rough day, you guys.
So just trying to do some level setting. So today for our greenhouse gas emissions inventory conversation, we're focusing only on the community. So these are businesses, industries, community members, their homes, it's everything across the city. So it's not just our organization as a city. But this is our 2023 community greenhouse gas emissions inventory. It feels like that was a long time ago, but that's because we have to start the year prior greenhouse gas emissions inventory after all the bills and everything have come in for the energy that we've used and our transportation data. So we're, in the next month or so, gonna start on the 2024 inventory. So that's why this feels like it's kind of far in the past, but it's actually not when it comes to like managing a whole year's worth of data and trying to put it through all of the calculations that have to be done. So just to give you a sense, so this is our annual community greenhouse gas emissions inventory, so 2018 through 2023. We started doing annual inventories in 2018, that's why we have it here, as well as this is our baseline year. So when we say we've seen an X percentage decrease or increase in greenhouse gas emissions for a certain category, it's based on 2018. And you can see how, at least for 2023, our greenhouse gas emissions are separated by sector for the year's worth of data. So buildings and energy is about 54%, transportation and mobile sources about 43%, solid waste at 3%. And again, this is greenhouse gas emissions inventory. So this is things like recycling, energy bags, or orange bags, et cetera. And then water renewal is not 0%, it's like 0.4%. But I will someday get around to changing that so it's more accurate.
Hey, Randy.
Yeah.
Does this account for embodied carbon too, or just operational?
It does not account
Okay.
for embodied carbon. Yeah.
Thanks.
Embodied carbon, yep. I realized that before I started going on. Embodied carbon is like the carbon you would have in like asphalt in the roadway or concrete in your buildings. Like we don't account for that kind of like stored carbon in our urban environment. Now this is a look at emissions per capita. So this is that same time series, except for here I have 2015 to 2023, so I added our 2015 inventory. And this green line is our per capita. So generally, the good news is when you compare to 2018, which is our baseline year, we have COVID, right? Looks nice, better, I don't know about nice, better. And then we have 2023 where actually it's less than baseline. So our per capita emissions are going down. Likely a lot of this has to do with just general efficiency in transportation and buildings and energy that we're seeing in technology development. But our population has increased. So though our community emissions are here, which is lower than 2018, our population has increased. So that's a nice thing to see. At this point in the game, some of it could be habit related, but a fair bit of it is probably more with technology upgrades and efficiency upgrades. And then this is our path to carbon neutral. So for folks who have spent time looking through the City of Boise's Climate Action Roadmap, which is available on our website, anyone can go on our website and find it, you can Google it, it's the first thing that pops up. But basically what this is a figure showing what we have modeled to get ourselves to carbon neutral by 2050. So here, effectively present day, where there's like, we're actually kind of over here, but when this was written, present day, like 2021, you can see that it's all the emissions as is. And then as time goes on and we're implementing the climate action roadmap and we're seeing things happening in the community that help get us to carbon neutral, we would expect to see the emissions, so basically this bottom line, the total emissions from where we were in 2021 going down. And then all of this is where those emissions are being saved and from what. This line here is if we do absolutely nothing. This line here is if technology improves and market development improves but we as a people don't do anything. That's this line. So we're going to assume that technology will do its thing, as it already is, and it's gonna create more effective technology, more efficient, energy efficient, fuel efficient, et cetera, all these things. So we expect to see this black line happen. That's just gonna be kind of the force of the market, right? But then we expect to see, as time goes on, all of these additional changes in the way we do things as people and the way we do things in the city of Boise, so that our emissions go down to here. This section here is most likely like very innovative technologies that we don't even know about yet, or purchasing carbon offsets, which is not ideal. It's not what we want to get our bread and butter, but there's also carbon emissions that we may be able to do absolutely nothing about. And so we will offset those. Questions about this before I move on?
Comment, Raymond?
Yes.
Just, you'll notice that this is, if you look at all these categories, it's only basically transportation, buildings, and energy. There's nothing here about planting trees, about a lot of the other things that we know are good to do and will help reduce our emissions. For calculation purposes, these are the ones that we've included because they're direct emissions that we can monitor. So there are a lot of other activities that are also in our roadmap that aren't included in this.
Yes. So behind this figure and behind the climate action roadmap is a model of greenhouse gas emissions through time and what we expect to see. And we, as the city of Boise, partnered with a consulting agency to help us get through this process.
Who was your consulting agency?
Brenda Group.
And do you have any details on the modeling that they're using that you could share?
Absolutely. Yeah, we have a full model.
Probably most importantly would be, I assume there's a big list of assumptions
Yes,
behind it.
absolutely, 110%, especially as you get further. And the model will be updated every 5 years. So this was from 2021, next year is 2026. Right around there, we're gonna start going through the process of updating this model.
And does the city do that itself, or does the Brendel Group come back?
We will work with a consultant, but probably not Brenda,
Okay.
yeah. We'll have to see,
Yeah,
right,
but
we
but
don't
it's,
know.
but you don't necessarily own the model now, it has to be.
Right.
Okay.
Good questions.
Is the city already purchasing carbon offsets?
Not at this time that I'm aware of. Yeah. We are earning carbon offsets because we have a facility, for example, I don't know if many of you know, but we have a farm as the city of Boise. And it's where we handle a lot of our biosolids, which is all of the solid things, as you can imagine, that are coming through the sewer system. So we process our biosolids at the farm. It's a much more environmentally friendly practice than taking them to the landfill, but that farm is actually generating more energy than it's using. And so we have those offsets.
That farm is rad.
It is, it's also kind of out there with our compost facility, so.
Yeah, it's a super cool tour, so can I just clarify that, like, okay, so for example, clean heat, you know, like if, like Idaho Power is transitioning to carbon neutral, or to 100% renewable energy, right? So as Idaho Power does that, it's not like this is up to individuals to it's like that's gonna go down because Idaho Power is gonna like
Yes.
electrify its grid and.
So my understanding is that Idaho Power's goal is 2045.
Yeah.
So you'll notice this
Oh,
kink,
okay, okay.
this kind of kink here in the graph.
Yeah.
This is, okay, Idaho Power has met their goal, and this is us doing the rest of it. But we will, we will all have to participate in that as time goes on. So Idaho Power, clean energy by 2045, and we need to be electrifying so that we're taking advantage of that clean energy and stepping away from natural gas.
And the idea is that as time goes on, electric vehicles will become more the norm and people will be able to afford them or whatever.
Yeah, so that's a great, it's like the electrical vehicle, and it's a great example of trying to understand the difference between what you're talking about, you know, kind of the market impact versus what we're sort of, I guess, spatially or uniquely gonna do in the city of Boise. 'Cause, I mean, I would assume, I mean, I guess we kind of hope that just, the market is gonna evolve to where electric vehicle evolution and, transition is gonna, to a significant degree, is gonna happen by the market. So is this, that section in the middle of the graph, is that something unique and special that City of Boise is gonna do above and beyond the progress that the market will make?
Are you looking at this kink here?
Yeah, just using the electric and efficient vehicles as an example.
Yeah. So there are things the city of Boise is doing and will be doing to help with that transition for the community. And I'm happy to get into tons of detail about that.
And that's what this
Yeah.
part of the graph represents.
This right here, and these
Okay.
kinks mean different things, right? So this kink aligns with the clean energy goal that Idaho Power has. So once Idaho Power gets to here, those electric vehicles will be fueled by 100% clean electricity.
Gotcha.
This kink here is the policy that was set by the federal government saying that vehicle manufacturers, OEMs, the original equipment manufacturers, have to have such percentage of their line as electric by 2035.
Right.
Which will change probably.
Which is why we update this every 5 years.
So I'm trying to come to terms with the black line, which is represented by technological advances.
Yep.
And the grayish area at the bottom that says advocacy, new technologies, and carbon offset.
Yes. So this is, like I said, general efficiencies, like things are already kind of emerging in the market, things we already know about that are gonna happen, we assume are gonna happen and continue to happen. This new technologies is like, there's a company, this is amazing to me, there's a company in California who's trying to create a hydrogen generator for homes for heat and energy. So it's like really innovative stuff that we just don't even know about yet, right? So this is a really gray for a reason area where like things are, thank goodness, gonna be developed and happen over the next 25 years that we don't even know about yet.
Got it.
Yeah.
Well, and especially in like the buildings and equipment space, like there's, I mean, I don't know if everybody's heard about all the hot gossip with refrigerants these days, but really high contributor for toxicity in homes and additionally just a huge GWP monster. And, there's things like water-based and CO2-based systems that are coming out every day and getting to market for things like multifamily and residential at an insane rate. So it's just amazing how quickly, I think that space for new technologies is gonna get eaten up really quick, actually.
So,
So is it fair to say that what you're asking of this committee is to, because this shows like a plan of achieving the goal,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So I guess the whole purpose of why you wanted this committee to come together was to help make this come true. This picture right there, help or increase the odds that this picture will actually happen?
I don't think,
Is that the idea?
I don't think necessarily like focusing on this, like this portion from when we did our activity last week was like buildings and energy, this feels too big to tackle on our own. So we're asking, and we'll get to an activity today, that like, this is big picture, we're gonna dive into more individual action, because what we are seeking is like what we all can do in our own homes, and or are there incentives that we can provide? Is there other opportunities that the city can do if that's what you guys are seeking? So I think it's a two-way street of like, yes, these are big picture goals of like how the trajectory that we see, but also there's the individual basis that we are seeking from this committee more specifically. Does that help answer?
Yeah.
The folks that,
Clear as mud.
Yeah, we're trying to help this become a reality.
Yes, yes, yep. And we as a team at the city who focus on this work every day, we are a very small sample of the community. And we don't want to presume that we know the answer. We know the answer for our personal situations, well, we try to, right? But we don't necessarily know for sure. But what we're hoping to gather from you all is just a stronger, deeper understanding of what community members are experiencing and how we as a city, or we all as a community can help our friends, our neighbors, ourselves get there so that we can reach this goal together.
When you mentioned body carbon not being part of the calculation, do you have any quick estimate, just crude estimate of what percentage of our carbon footprint is body carbon? Just compared to other cities or other research out there? I mean, it could be way off, but is it?
I don't
Annual
actually.
growth? No.
I don't, but I will write that down after I'm speaking in.
Because it does force us to look at how growth impacts the carbon footprint in the longer term. And also the materials that funnel that growth, or the materials we use to expand our road system versus other options.
And this
The
is
type of growth too.
Yes, exactly.
Sprawl versus dense.
Yeah.
And this is where it's so, we talk about this later in our presentation. But this is where it's so important to think about advocating for these things, working with policymakers, providing feedback on our zoning code when those opportunities come up, because that's where a lot of that type of work would live. And then we are there as climate team members of the city. We have our materials management team that thinks about these things all the time. We're there as resources to help our planning and development services as well, which who.
And it can be tools for sequestering carbon too,
Yes.
how we build can actually sequester.
And
then
just to add, Kate, I think like whenever you do a carbon inventory or an emissions inventory, one of the most important things is like deciding what's your boundary area. And I think like just to keep it a little bit simpler for the purpose of our discussion, there's a lot of things that aren't included in our boundary. Like this is what we're including, and we can measure it every year and we can track our progress. And it has an impact on the other things that you're thinking about, the embodied carbon. And we are additionally putting policies in place, making decisions to reduce those emissions that are less quantifiable, to, you know, have smart growth, put parks in, et cetera. But like, just for our discussion, like this is our boundary.
Right, and it may be worth our while as we move forward and stay within the limitations of that boundary, and make sure when we're in the public that they understand that is the boundary and there are other things.
Yeah, that's it, yeah.
And then other quick question, this is more of a side question, on a farm, what is the size of the Boise farm, do you know?
Oh, how many acres is it?
3,000 acres, I believe.
And the biosolids, are you seeing any contamination from plastics and so on, because that gets back to that emission of pollution and.
Those are great questions for our material science team that can handle,
That's an issue they're seeing in a number of areas, whether they use biosolids as a fertilizer now.
Yep. We have some of that, and I know we have a good presentation that we can send you guys to, just about the farm. There's some
Yeah.
really cool facts
Yeah, ton.
about our farm that we have in CUNA, so.
Thank you.
But we're gonna keep going, we have a big presentation to get through as well, okay.
But I love the questions, so it's
Yes.
really hard to like.
Also, sorry, I have just a super quick add. I did a rough calculation on the embodied carbon as compared to global emissions with the Boise stats, and it's around 16% from the 2018 stats.
Oh, great.
What percent was that again?
16%.
1/6, okay.
Thank you.
No,
All right, we're gonna follow that. So, my name is Katie O'Neill. I work on the Climate to Action team with Randy, and I am the Energy Program Manager. So I'm responsible for our climate action roadmap as it relates to buildings and energy. That includes like interfacing with Idaho Power, Intermountain Gas, our public utilities, and some of the other things we do there. So Randy kind of gave you the overview of our community emissions and our carbon neutral goal. And I'm gonna dive a little bit deeper into like, what does it look like for buildings and energy specifically? And so if you have any questions. So just to start off, everybody here, if you live in Boise, your electric utility provider is Idaho Power. This is what the Idaho Power electricity mix looks like generally. This is their generation mix. So one of the great things is we have a huge hydropower system. And this can fluctuate from year to year based on the water levels, but this is like the bread and butter of Idaho Power. They also have some solar and wind facilities. This geothermal is not the Boise geothermal. This is their own geothermal plant. And then there's some coal that they're in the process of exiting, some natural gas, and then market purchases, which, depending on the year, can be clean or dirty energy.
How this compares nationally, it's a lot cleaner grid than a national average, so that's something that's great already. And just to backtrack, I won't get into this, but this is the generation, not the distribution mix, just as a caveat. In the national grid, we have nuclear added in, we have a smaller percentage of hydro, a greater percentage of coal and natural gas. And then something that Randy mentioned that's also very, very important for our climate action roadmap is that Idaho Power has a 100% clean energy goal by 2045. So this whole thing should be 100% clean by 2025, and this is something that Idaho Power is actively working on, and it's something that I'm kind of keeping my eye on as well.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
What percentage, how would the hydroelectric portion of the mix change if they remove the lower Snake River dams? Is it like significant or is it insignificant? My understanding is it's insignificant, right? Okay, I just wanna make sure, I'm not like, I didn't get the wrong
answer to that
information.
Is it significant?
Okay.
I mean, yes, and dams can be controversial, but they don't produce emissions from the generation of electricity. So that's kind of what we're talking about today.
Well, like if we're advocating for these
Yeah.
dam removals, are we also then advocating for like a dirtier energy mix? Is my question.
Those dams are not Idaho Power dams.
Right.
So it potentially could impact the market purchases one a little bit.
Okay.
But only if but that's not the lower forest that she's talking about.
We can talk about the dams like a later time.
Thank you.
So to continue, this is what the building energy plan looks like in Boise. So Randy showed you that kind of wedge graph, and this is what it looks like for buildings and energy. So in our buildings, we use energy in two ways generally. We use them like natural gas to heat or to cook, and then we use electricity, sometimes to heat or cook, but also to put our lights on, to plug in our computers, to run our appliances. And then there's a small portion of the energy coming from geothermal. And so this is like the Warm Springs or one of the 4 geothermal systems in Boise. Over here you see, this is our business as usual, like if we did nothing path. And you can see that our plan is as the efficiency increases, so this is efficiency specifically for buildings and energy, so we're talking like better HVAC systems, better insulation in your house, specific buildings and energy installation, we're gonna lower that demand. Shift away from natural gas as the electric grid becomes clean. And then expand the geothermal system, and this is underway, this is a little bit TBD, so I wanted to include it, but this is not really the focus, it's a small percentage of our overall energy mix.
Is this just natural gas, at the source, or is this including, Idaho Power's natural gas?
Idaho Power's natural gas would be included in electricity. So technically, it's dirtier to use natural gas for electricity because it has to go through so many more processes than it is to just do it directly. So going back to the community emissions, you saw this before. We're gonna focus right now on residential and commercial energy. This is the buildings portion. So I'm gonna just take that out. When we look at this, it's almost half and half, commercial and residential. On the commercial piece, this is something the city has programs that we're working on. Lindsay is very active in this space. There's a lot underway here, and if you're a building owner or an architect, this is something that you'll probably be interfacing with the city on. But it's not the focus of what we need the community's help on. What we need the community's help on is this piece, residential energy. It's our community responsibility. So you might ask yourself, okay, I have a home, I live in a home. How do I use my energy in my home? And I know this is kind of like, this is not city branding, it's kind of a messy graph, but I really like it because one thing that jumps out is that you think, oh, washers and dryers like use all the energy. They're a very small percentage. And this is from the EIA, so it's a national average. Heating, space heating, water heating, and space cooling. Huge percentage of overall energy. If you can make a dent in this, you're making a huge dent in your overall energy use. There's not actually as much in the home entertainment as there used to be. Like flat screen TVs use very little energy compared to like older ones. Cooking, not so much. So you do see like refrigerators and washers and dryers, but really like the takeaway here is heating and cooling. And if you just wanna break it down, there it is. 54% approximately heating and cooling, 46% everything else. So it's kind of cool. And these aren't like from necessarily the same exact source for the math. And of course, this is gonna depend on your house and your situation. And so when we talk about ways that we can reduce our home energy use, for me, it's more important to talk about magnitude of impact than like a specific emissions reduction amount. And this is something Lindsay and I talked about. I actually had each of these written out as like X number of BTUs saved and like metric tons of carbon. But that's not so helpful to people who A, don't speak like the parlance, and B, are looking like, well, what gives me the most like bang for my buck? So everyone should have one of these charts, and on one side, it's gonna show buildings and energy, and on the other side, it's gonna show transportation. These are for you to keep. Randy and I made these. And this is basically like the most common actions you can take to reduce your home energy usage. And it goes from low impact to high impact. And by impact, I'm talking about emissions reductions. Okay, so that's the impact we're talking about. We'll go back to the carbon neutral 2050 graph. And the stars are like an order of magnitude. So turning off your lights, that's great, but like blowing your thermostat is actually pretty impactful. It's not even something that I'm that keen on doing. There's a couple of these I'm going to explain, and then I'll give you a chance to answer questions before I turn it over to Randy. So on the education piece, one of the things I want to point out is that home energy audit. This came up in our community conversations at the library. This is something you can do through Idaho Power. They send a contractor out to your house, and they do like all these tests to decide like, they do a blower test, they check your insulation, they'll even wrap your pipes and stuff, and they'll help you understand. They give you a 30-page report. And it says like, here's all the places you can save energy in your home. So this is something, and that's not gonna actually reduce your emissions, but it has an impact on all of these. And this also has an impact because you can tell all your friends about it. Another one, understanding the incentives. You can see a lot of people aren't aware that there are federal incentives, seem to be safe for now, and Idaho Power incentives or Intermountain Gas incentives for doing some of these actions. Another one I wanted to talk about is a smart thermostat. This is when you have this thermostat that can auto-regulate, and there's even programs that maybe down the line, like an electric utility can like raise it 1 or 2 degrees to lower the peak demand at a certain time. So that's kind of cool. HVAC, if you don't know, stands for heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. So upgrading your HVAC is something that can have a huge impact. You're getting something higher efficiency, you're getting a different type of system. This can really lower your emissions. And something just like as a side note, most normally, people don't expect to upgrade their HVAC system. It's not something that people have like a money lying around for. It usually comes as a surprise. So if you think about it ahead of time, it can be a good opportunity. Off-peak hours. Who here knows what off-peak hours are?
Lower demand hours.
So on the Idaho Power Grid, there's a substantial amount of solar, right? The solar is highest at noon. I said I would do this one thing, I need to go to the graph, go to the chart. So it looks like this. When people use the most energy is here in the morning and here at night. You get home, you eat dinner, everyone starts doing the dishwasher, they start like cooking their meals. But this is actually when you have the most energy available. So when we're talking about off-peak hours, it's like, hey, can you actually run your major appliances in the evening? Can you maybe get your dinner ready earlier? If enough people shift their hours, let's say this is like where the baseload electric demand is, they don't have to use the dirtier natural gas power plants to meet that demand. So if enough people do it, it can have an impact. Please know. And this is actually something that Idaho Power offers in their residential rates. So, and then the last one I wanted to just talk about is.
I'm sorry, I have a question about that. Do you mean that they'll modify your bill vis-a-vis your use of off or on peak hours? Do they have that chart available on their website?
Yes.
Peak demand.
It's right here. Sorry. Looks like this.
Great.
So it really only makes sense if you actually can shift your demand. So I signed up for it and I'm like 50-50 on whether I'm like actually using the energy at the right time. Because sometimes I'm like, I really want to run the dishwasher. So that's something you can opt into if you want. And then I'm almost done. The last thing I wanted to talk about is there's also a way on this clean energy portion. There's programs you can do on your bill to pay a little extra either per kilowatt hour or per month to make sure that your energy comes from a clean source. So there's ways you can do that if you don't have like solar panels, you can do something like this. I'm gonna pass it to Randy. Talk about transportation.
Okay, hi. So just going over transportation in terms of our greenhouse gas emissions inventory and where those emissions within transportation are coming from. So again, you've seen this a few times now. It's our 2023 greenhouse gas emissions inventory pie chart showing how our emissions are split up amongst these different sectors. So 43% of our emissions in 2023 as a community were transportation and mobile sources. That's higher than the national average. We as a state are transportation emissions heavy compared to the national average. But what is included in transportation and mobile sources are commercial and industrial fleets, so like the city of Boise vehicles that you see driving around, like Parks and Rec vehicles, the other cities in the Treasure Valley, right? Basically any commercial vehicle that you're seeing driving around with a logo on it is considered a fleet vehicle as part of this measurement here, as well as commuters and other driving that you do. So whatever driving you do in your daily life, particularly your commute, that's where most people tend to emit the most greenhouse gas emissions as a traveler, and when you're just running your errands separately. And then air travel is one of them, right? So we do include the fuel that is used at the Boise airport as a part of our greenhouse gas emissions inventory and transportation, and then other mileage and fuel use. And one thing I want to highlight here in the other category is a lot of small engine and off-road use. So transportation includes things like dirt bikes in the Boise foothills, ATVs, etc. It also includes things like your lawnmower and your construction equipment and your weed eater, etc. All of those sources. Basically anything with a motor. Okay, and then this is again our forecast, and so I just wanted to highlight here, kind of pull out the transportation sources within this so you can get a picture of what we're looking at when it comes to the modeled emissions over time and are reaching our 2050 goal. So transportation here, actually take out that, so sorry about that. It's actually this wedge here, that's my mistake. But it's vehicle trip reduction, convenient transportation options, electric and efficient vehicles, again, airlines, etc. So it's all of the transportation, and this is how we expect it to change through time. So from a really high level, I just want to talk about what can we do to reduce our transportation emissions. A lot of this is not going to seem groundbreaking, probably to this crew, but I think it's worth just outlining the basics, things that are the most impactful, so that we can kind of level set. So the first thing you can do to help to reduce greenhouse gas emissions associated with transportation is to reduce your vehicle miles traveled. That could mean walking, that could mean biking, that can mean teleworking when you're able to, if that's something that's offered at your job. Because then you're just not commuting, right? Taking the bus, carpooling, combining trips. So what I mean by combining trips is if you have a couple errands to do, rather than doing one in the morning and one in the evening and going home in between, do them both at the same time. Because then you're cutting out miles. And then micromobility. So like when you're able to, for example, try out an e-bike or an e-scooter, or other types of small electric transportation to help you get from one place to another to help you reduce vehicle miles traveled. So when we're talking about vehicle miles traveled, it's like single occupancy vehicles on the road. When you are traveling in a vehicle that uses fuel, use electricity as that fuel as often as you can. That has a huge range of access challenges. However, we are seeing more and more electric vehicles on the road in Boise and more electric transportation options. That does include things like the Lime e-scooters and e-bikes or ones you might purchase yourself. It also includes the small fleet of electric buses that Valley Regional Transit has, and then it can include electric carpool vehicles, and it can include electric personal single occupancy vehicles.
Just a really quick question. Do we have any kind of incentives that kind of engage our corporations to use carpooling? Like, because in Seattle, you know, Microsoft has buses that go out to all parts of the city and all over, you know, the Seattle area, and then you can jump in, park and ride. They taking work. Is that anything that's being discussed here with like Micron or the hospitals or where the majority of our workforce might be hanging out?
I am not aware of any commercial shuttle options other than Boise State, and we have Valley Regional Transit. ACHD has a commuter ride program.
Right.
So that's more like a public focused one.
These are owned by the corporation that they go and get their people and bring them to work and take them home.
Yeah, and I lived in San Francisco for a time, and I very much remember the Google buses.
Yeah, right.
But I am not aware of that happening here in Boise.
Okay.
And the incentive there generally is more financial for the organization that's doing it, because it's a great way to retain employees and it can save on employee parking, et cetera. But I'm not familiar with any organization here
That's doing that, yeah.
I know that some healthcare organizations are beginning to consider it, not just in Boise, but in rural areas of the state as well, as a workforce retention method.
Well, to get people to work,
We also added into the modern zoning code, sorry, Crystal from Planning and Development Services, an option for parking reductions if employers utilize a transportation demand management program. And so hopefully we'll be seeing more companies take advantage of that and maybe have some of the shuttle.
Yeah, because I think that could just keep a lot of people off the road.
So I just wanted to also share this data that we have available to us. This was actually done by a study through Boise State, so this is very local information for us. But this is looking at how people are commuting when they commute. So we have 80% of folks in the area drive alone, 8% carpool, 3% ride their bike, 2% walk, less than 1% use public transportation, it's something like 0.7%. And then 7% use other, this is where teleworking lives. I want to talk about this, but we also need to keep.
It would be interesting to compare that to like a national average or a national of city, mid-sized cities or something.
Cities, maybe in the west.
Like that, because that would open up.
Yeah, grab some mid-sized cities.
I can say, sorry, as a very quick factoid, when Seattle was our size, they substantially outstripped our rate of public transit access. So we are quite behind in terms of decent access cities.
But back to you. And also living in
I saw a presentation recently by BRT where they listed the percentage of household income spent on transportation and how we compare with other cities. Is that something that this city is like publishing as well? Because it was really like sort of sad for Boise.
Yeah, eye-opening, because again, our average income is lower than I think a lot of people expect. That's not data that we tend to work with frequently, but it is very useful data. I partner with BRT a lot, and I'll ask them
Thank you.
Quick, super quick.
Yeah.
No, like the commuter miles, that's Boise residents.
Yes.
So how do you capture non-resident miles traversed across the city that are coming from? It seems substantial, but I know that's captured maybe VRT or Compass.
Yeah, we account for that in our greenhouse gas emissions inventories because we get that model data from Compass. So we do, for our greenhouse gas emissions inventories, we do our just vehicle miles traveled in the city in general, doesn't matter where they're from. For our climate action roadmap, and the conversation that we have here today, not so much for our climate action roadmap because it absolutely includes that population of folks who are just kind of driving through the city or coming in here to work. But for this information, this is for folks that live in Boise. Yeah. So this is a similar table to what Katie was showing you. So again, 1 star is lower impact.
You guys flip it over.
Transportation. So 1 star is lower impact, and then it kind of goes up by order of magnitude until you get to 4 stars, which is the highest impact you can have in transportation. I have a lot of indirect ones listed here, and I'm happy to talk about any of them individually if you would like to. But one I want to point out, just because I think sometimes we as community members, especially very active, caring community members, don't realize that this is something that we ought to be engaging in and that we can make a big difference in. But an indirect impact is advocating for transportation. And so that's advocating with planning and development services to make it very clear that you all as community members want to see sustainable transportation practices and practices in our zoning code or elsewhere across city policy that help us get to where we need to be in terms of our climate action goals. Additionally, not just the city, right, but advocating at the state level. Make it very clear to your legislatures that you care about these things. And you want to see them making decisions and voting for things that matter in these ways. So this is a big piece. It's indirect, but it can have quite a large impact. It's not terribly measurable, hence why it's indirect, but I want to point it out. And then another one I want to point out is just little things. You'd be surprised. So these are for me in transportation, it's kind of the opposite of Katie's situation. People tend to know the higher impact things in transportation, right? Like biking or walking, using micromobility, taking the bus, buying an electric vehicle or a hybrid vehicle. Those all have a great impact. You've all probably heard of all of those things before. In transportation, there are actually little things that you can do that make a really big difference as well, but we don't tend to think about them. And that's this behavior column when it comes to transportation. So if you are driving your own vehicle, try to stop idling. I pick up my kids when I can from their school, and the number of vehicles that idle for 15 minutes or longer just like grinds my gears. I want to put out all of our don't idle signs. And then checking tire pressure. You can increase your fuel efficiency by 10% if you keep your appropriate tire pressure. It's a small act and it makes a big difference. Driving smoothly. So rather than those abrupt start stops, accelerating hard, decelerating hard, turning fast, etc., you can save your fuel efficiency sometimes, depending on the driver, by 30%. You might as well be driving a hybrid at that point. So there are little things that make a really big difference. And then again, I have clean transportation for utilizing alternative fuels, vehicle trip reduction, so getting those miles down as much as you can, and then our indirect. And I will stop there.
When you say small engine replacement, is that electrification?
Yes, or replacing engines in small equipment with more fuel efficient engines. That's not generally a practice people take, you can do it, but it's instead of using a gasoline powered weed eater or lawnmower, you switch to electric.
Battery, yeah.
What do you mean by multimodal under education and advocacy?
Yes, I appreciate that question. So what multimodal means is effectively using more than one type of transportation to get to where you want to go. So it might be taking the bus, and then for that very last mile of your trip, because your bus stop isn't right in front of work, you take a line scooter. So it's trying to connect different ways of using transportation to get to where you want to be in order to reduce those single occupancy vehicle trips or those like single driver, no passenger type trips.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's one more thought.
Yeah, does the city have, I know we're focusing on like community efforts here, but has the city transitioned to like the small engine replacement stuff, I guess, like electric powered for like landscape?
As a city?
Yeah.
We have, we're working on it.
Yeah.
So, so we have, as of 2023, I worked with our fleet manager at the city. He manages all 1,700 assets in fleet the city has, that's anything with a motor.
Yeah.
And we now have what's called our EV first policy in place. That means that anything that the city buys that has a motor needs to be an electric vehicle, it needs to be electric unless there's some sort of extenuating circumstance that makes it so that's not really possible. And if there is an extenuating circumstance, that situation has to go in front of a committee. So it's a pretty strict policy.
Yeah. I was just thinking, I think like that's one that I hadn't like thought of as much, but you know, when you analyze like those types of data points for landscape maintenance, that's huge. And I think like the community would love to hear about stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because there's just, I mean, so many people are using just like nasty like gas weed whackers or like, you know, whatever, all that kind of stuff. It's just crazy.
Yeah, that feels a little bit like a low-hanging fruit for the community too. It's like, it's hard to afford to buy an electric car or a hybrid, but it's less hard to buy an electric lawnmower. And like a lot of those two-stroke engines really are pretty nasty, so I don't know. I mean, that does seem like a doable thing from a, you know, on the home scale. It is really hard to move around this town as spread out and sprawly as it is. And I teach at CWI, I've got students who are coming, it's impossible for them to get there by bus. I mean, it's not impossible, a few people do it, but it is hard, and it's like, and I choose to live in a place where I can ride my bike, because it really matters to me and all of that, but I'm looking around and I'm like, man, I mean, it is hard.
Yeah.
And I know the city has just updated its zoning code and all of that, and that is exciting, but it also feels like, man, if we can't lock that down, it just gets, and I mean, and I don't mean to, take it out of the hands of individuals, but this is one of those, it's like, if we build it like, if we build it not sprawly, we can move around a lot easier, and the data that, the demographic data is showing that, so I don't know how that interfaces with what we're talking about here, but it just feels so important.
Totally. Build less sprawly, have a better funded public transportation system. Like it's this huge interconnected network of challenges that we just have to keep chipping away at. And I think that's where a lot of the indirect pieces here come in, especially as an advocate for transportation, right? As well as all these other things that we can do when we can make it work. And I'm a parent of 2 little kids, and sometimes a lot of these don't work in this community.
Yeah.
So I'm absolutely not ignorant, I'm so empathetic to so much of this.
Yeah.
And it is really hard. And I think we, as a community, and as a city, and as a state, can do better. But, so, that's the work we do. We gotta,
Yeah, sorry, Nate.
Oh, good. Good?
Yeah, we gotta do our activity. We gotta get everyone off.
This is what it's.
Yeah, and I think like what Randy's saying is super important, because there are like times when it doesn't work. And I think about the same thing with energy, when we ask people to electrify, there's a billing impact to that. And that's something that like I don't take lightly. So, activity. We are gonna do something everyone's gonna get up, move around. No questions. This activity is called Yes If. There's no, it's yes if.
Yes if.
So you're gonna look at your bingo card, and a bingo card has 8 of these activities, 8 of these actions that Randy and I each chose, 4 from energy, 4 from transportation, and then there's a wild card in the middle. And you're gonna put a sticker on anything that you are currently doing. You personally, if you are currently doing this, put a sticker on it.
Like any amount of time, or?
You know what, you choose.
Okay.
Like, you choose if you think it meets the impact. For actions you are not doing, we wanna know yes if. And it would be, I would do this action if. And this if could be anything. It could be if I win the lottery. It could be if I actually care. It could be if I didn't have kids. If I didn't need to drive. It could, like, we wanna know what would it actually take for you to do this activity? We're looking to understand. Yes, I would do that action if. Yeah. So, I'm gonna give everyone like 2-3 minutes to do this. And then we're gonna stand up and get the blood flowing.
They might go.
Well, yeah, 5 minutes. However much time you need.
I don't know, I didn't grab bread. I was waiting for sticker correction.
Oh, I didn't read it. But no, I don't mean to.
You're right.
Yeah, at least test it.
I don't know.
Because I got really screwed up.
It is so spread out there. I just and we it was really taking care of those rights. I really students.
I mean, our city bus is a free bus match, and I keep trying to take the bus to things, and it like doesn't go where I want it to go.
Yeah.
And the times are super weird. It's like, oh, it'll take you 45 minutes, and it's also at 6 a.m.
Yeah.
It is a real chicken or egg. I've talked to some people, they say like,
Even though we do it, like we have some doing classes and stuff. Yeah, it was interesting, like not having a choice, like that was just like, that was it. Yeah. Like sometimes like home, it was like, yeah, we're like, well, I'm on the bus. And that's, I remember it only like took half. Yeah, because I live at home, yeah.
Good sign.
My next time was like, they usually get to like stick it in a little gear box.
This is, what if I could see it on Santa's Day?
Yeah. Just be really nervous about this, huh?
You don't use energy? Yeah, instead of using a dryer, I can go out and dry.
Yeah, that's
And your clothes last so much longer.
And it's like sort of therapeutic. No, so I mean.
I
I agree with you. It's like just a remarkable last a little bit longer.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know, they just get up and move around too, but I'm fine.
Would you do it or not if?
What would it take?
Yeah, I guess I should have said, I would like it if the guess if was like somewhat realistic. Like, I should have caveated that, I would like it if it was like a realistic thing, not like regular life. As you guys are finishing up, you can take more time if you need, but I'm gonna ask you to stand up and find a partner that you're not sitting next to that you don't know. And you're gonna discuss one of your sticker actions and one of your yes if actions, and you just are gonna discuss. And then when you're done, you can add comments, and then you're gonna initial each other's bingo card, since bingo, in the squares that you discussed, so. As you finish, go find someone else.
Sorry.
Well, they're only two squares this time, so you're not gonna do
I would agree with you, because I think we discussed right by our house, but it only comes once an hour, and it only comes Monday through Friday.
Loving the discussion. No, stay where you are. Stay where you are. Everyone should have 2 squares initialed right now. But how many squares is a bingo?
5.
3 squares. So Lindsay is gonna bring a prize. Someone who gets a bingo. So now you have to go find someone else, and I can make it trickier. They have to have the same square as you. Either a yes if or a green dot. You have to try to make a bingo.
Yes.
Yeah, maybe we can do a discussion. We already have a bingo.
Everybody go find your.
You're gonna do it.
Okay, plot twist. Quickly, so I'm just gonna mention something, and it sounds like everyone's having really robust discussions, so we don't really need to do the whole bingo thing. We are sending out a survey with all of the actions to you on Wednesday. So this is just like a little sampler of the actions, and we're gonna send you a survey, and we're gonna really think like what would be a reasonable yes if for every single thing, so like turning energy from step. Do people still want more time in pairs, or should we bring it to the big group discussion? Let's bring it to discussion. Okay.
Okay, oh, blue circles are good too. Okay, I'm looking around the room and I see different levels, different color, or not different, yes, different color dots, but different dots in different squares. Does anyone want to talk about what are the current actions that they're doing? Any of the great, some that are like, yep, this is easy, I've built it into my life, or something that I've already instilled, whatever it might be. Anyone want to?
No matter how impactful it is.
Yep.
Everything's important. I talked about my time of energy use. I mean, I have it easy because I work from home. So I can do laundry during the day, but I schedule my dishwasher to go during the night.
Love that, nice.
So I just
There's a little delay on your dishwasher,
Yeah,
it's
5
like 4
hours.
hours. Yeah, I love that, super smart, things that I think people don't think about all the time, but like a very useful tool, so that's great.
I'm a proud
Yeah.
bus commuter. Darn it.
I love that.
There's like all one of us in the Treasure Valley. I've been doing this at several different locations, so I've moved every year for the past 4 years, and I've commuted by bus at every different household.
That's impressive.
That is impressive.
Tough sometimes.
I bet.
My current job makes it really hard because it takes 20 minutes to get to work, but an hour to get home on what is usually a 9-minute drive. So I'm now having to weigh, is it worth it to get a car?
Yeah.
But, what was that?
Get some good reading.
I do that.
Yeah, audiobooks and stuff, yeah.
I made it kind of a game, like whenever I go to a new like meeting at a different park site or something like that, I'll try to commute there by bus. I'll try to take the bus there and do just work as I go. But I usually ride my bike to work, and so then I ride my bike to the bus stop, put my bike on the bus, and then take the bus there. And usually it doesn't take me all the way there, so I take my bike there. And typically, almost always, I could have ridden my bike there.
Exactly.
So it's more of just seeing, like the experience on the bus than anything else.
Yeah, it really depends on what line you're on. And if you're on the number 3 line, the drivers are like so nice and they give great life advice.
Just saying.
Okay, other actions that folks are taking now is like, yep, I'm proud of this, or I do this, before we get to the other last part.
I did do a solar thing, and it is for us, they sold us a big talk, but it's mostly true. Like they gave us a loan, and the amount of money that the loan payment is about what we would have paid for electricity anyway, and like, so I do feel like it has not affected my pocketbook really to do that, and I feel like that is something that, like more people, if they knew about it, it might work for them too.
Yeah.
I gotta put a chime in for solar. Solar and EV, if you have both, it's great, because you never look at the price of gas, you never look at the cost of energy, you just go home and plug in and go from there. But Idaho Power has sort of made it more difficult made it more costly to do solar now. But the combination of the two are really nice.
Nice. Cool, those are great. Okay, now I want to hear the ifs. Yes, if. And this could be anything. This is what we want to hear, and to Katie's point, we will send a follow-up survey, because this is really what we want to understand of like, yes, you would take this if X, Y, Z. That's what we're trying to really help create for you guys. So curious to hear any ifs that you already have. Yeah.
I said yes, like now I will, adjusting my thermostat to a good degrees, because I didn't know about that, so I feel like that would be something that would be good to include in our community guide.
Totally.
And I always used to make fun of my dad because our house was like either freezing or super hot, and they were fine. But now I get it, so.
Just saving energy.
Yeah.
That'll do you nice. I love that, and that's a really good point. I think I looked at all of your guys' faces during that point. You're like, what? Like the shock of just adjusting your thermostat to 3 degrees. What can that do? So I took mental note of making sure that.
Sweatshirt.
It's wild.
Everything blanket.
Yes. Any other yes ifs that anyone wants to share?
I would ride the bus, but I don't have service in my community, so, and I used to ride the bus every day in Seattle, but.
Yeah, there are real barriers. There's some things, last year, the year before, the city started working with Lime. It's just the only micromobility provider, and they do first and last mile connections. It's basically like a severely reduced rate, and coupon that you get off just of like trying to make those connections without driving too much.
Online?
Yes, yes.
It's so expensive.
Yes.
Yeah, I usually bike in most places, but I'm gonna give the bus a try.
Yeah.
And I wanna try the idea of just being random. Yeah, see where it goes and then.
Just write it for a couple of hours. I thought.
Are you gonna report back by our next meeting?
That's a bike, or you should do the combo, that's what scares, I know, that scares me, but I might even try that.
Sometimes you will end up very far from your destination
Okay, this
crying
is-
a little bit, but that's very rare.
Okay.
Saved a lot of places in Boise too.
That's true.
I also would say that like one piece of this is like as you guys are learning information, like you are advocates in your own daily lives too. So like if you walked away with one new tidbit today about turning your thermostat down and you told 10 people about that, look at like the collective impact that we just had after one day. So I would keep that in your mind at all times of like, this is beyond just this group is very passionate. It's like, oh, I learned so much today, but really how can I share this with my family, friends, and neighbors of how they can make an impact too. So.
And then make a note if anyone's like, oh, I don't wanna do that because that's a reverse yes.
Yeah.
And we wanna hear about that.
Do you know if there's a cost for the home energy audits?
Yes. It's a very reduced rate though. It's a $445 value in Idaho Park. If you have a natural gas house, it's $149.
If you have
And
what?
a natural gas heated house is $149, and if you have an all-electric home, it's $99. So I actually, like, this is something that as I was researching this, I'm like, why haven't I signed up? And so I signed up.
That was my if, it was like,
But Elaine?
if it's not exorbitant to do it.
Mine was only $50.
This is interesting, if this were from the hours.
And you get a $50 tax credit that pays for it. So mine was free.
Also, the Integrated Design Lab through the University of Idaho, you can rent, they have an energy resource library where you can rent over like 300 tools for free to measure your indoor environmental quality, your lighting in your house, your energy, your water. It's, it's a fabulous resource that we have, and it's.
What's it called again?
It's the Energy Resource Library from the Integrated Design Lab at University of Idaho, Boise.
If you look up Ideal
Library.
Yeah. That's something that.
I can also email the group if you want to.
yeah.
You can send it, I can send it to the group afterwards.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Yeah, there's a few different things I heard today that I'll make sure we follow up and include in that survey too, so.
There's a lot of ifs I had. I mean, I used to have an EV, so I have a hybrid now. For reasons I just like going places where it's like, well, now I just bricked my car. But there were so many ifs in there. One was like 1 year, like just to register our EV, it was like quadrupled. I was like, what is happening? But there was another if in there that I loved tremendously, which was you got this like little, you registered it with the city and you could park it in the meter for like the max time for like $10 a year or something, which was super rad.
If you own an EV, you can park downtown in the city of Boise parking spaces, which is like all of the, like fee to park the metered spaces. You go on the city's website, we'll send out this link, and you put in your vehicle information, and you pay $10 a year to park in any of those metered spots, as much as, I think up to the time limit. Well, it's up to the time limit of the spot.
Yeah, then you gotta move it
Yeah.
and you can start over.
But you don't have to pay, yes.
It has to be 100% electric, not a plug-in.
It has to be an all electric vehicle.
It is a hot.
It was great. I was
Does it include the city garages?
No, because those are not city of Boise. Those are CCEC.
Yeah, okay, any other ifs that people wanna talk about before we move on to just our last few slides? Any other yes ifs?
Oh, I see, let's hit it.
I don't think that needs to be publicized more about the parking. I've had an EV for a year, I didn't know that. My wife pays to park all the time, but.
That's good to know. We'll make that up. A lot of things, I think, just like even that, I think we're all learning here today of education that can somehow, can we compile as, that's like an easy resource for community members. So I think I go back to like our end deliverable, what does that look like? How do we organize it, et cetera? So as you guys are turning these things, we're making a ton of notes as we get to that. Yeah.
That's what I was just thinking of, like the end product, where like you go to the City of Boise website and there's really no like when you go to residence, there's trash and recycling, but there's no like, hey, improve your energy. And then I was even thinking like, do you rent or own? And that could like kind of.
Because it does change, like when we talk about buildings and energy, like if you're a renter. Right, those are very different things, but like there's still things that you can do and we don't want to discourage. This whole thing is too is like, don't make perfection, the enemy of like, while I can't do this, I can do this. And I think making sure that residents feel empowered to be able to do some of those things is really important. So I love that you're thinking the envelope, because that's what I think about all the time. I was like, how are we gonna put this together? Okay, in the essence of time, I'm gonna skip to, there's just a few last couple things. We have a community conversation actually tomorrow. We've had one already. I saw a couple committee members, which was great. A couple more. We do have a citywide survey that's available and out as well. That's right here on this website. This has all of our information. It has this, you guys, the committee on there as well, and then all these events that are coming up. Our next event will be at the Watershed, which is also our Climate Action Center, which is opening March 15th for its grand opening after a huge remodel. It's very cool. As someone, my team also has language access and accessibility. There's tons of cool features. The entire thing is translated into Spanish as well. So we'll get a tour at our next meeting. And then we will also focus on natural environment and consumption and waste. I heard a few comments also about the farm, so we'll make sure that we guys get some information on that. These two are ones that you guys definitely were like, oh my gosh, yes, love this. Want to hear more and what can I do more? So today's was like, buildings and energy and transportation feels huge, not sure where to start. And this one is what you guys really gravitated towards last time. So that's kind of where we've been guided so far. And then the last thing, we do have an Earth Day celebration that's coming up. We need a couple extra volunteers. I'll include this in the email with a few more details. Just an opportunity, no ask whatsoever, but we do a fun Earth Day event at one of our parks that has a ton of community partners. It's not just city-led, but some really cool things to celebrate Earth Day. So just upcoming, and then the Watershed opening is March 15th. I'll include that in our email too. In case you want to go, it's going to be awesome. I'm really excited for you guys to see it at our April meeting.
This Saturday.
That is this Saturday. That's right. Yeah. That's all we have for tonight. So thank you so much for coming. We'll see you at the Watershed. Make sure you give yourself plenty of travel time. Take your worksheets with you. Just it's kind of out there. So also leave your sheets. We'll bring these every time for you guys just so you get to know each other. Take your sheets and bring me the dots if you wouldn't mind. Yep.
Also, if anyone is looking to feel more educated and empowered in the buildings and energy space, I run a group called Climate Club, and maybe once a month it's like building industry professionals, and we talk about all things sustainability. So if anyone wants to get on our email list, let me know.
Thank you.